Andrew Ross, founder, co-owner of the Whale Craft Beer Collective.
Chris Frosaker, founder and co-owner of Hi-Wire Brewing, and also owner of Joyful Noise Listening Lounge and Kitchen.
Yeah, so the Whale is turning 9 this year. So we opened in 2017. Kind of our whole premise on what the Whale was from delivery and, now through multiple locations is, a gathering space for upscale, higher end beer. The name The Whale is kind of tongue in cheek for hard to find sought after beers. So that's something that we really take to heart with our buying, and then we try to present it in a very approachable, non-pretentious yet upscale environment. So we try to make everything very approachable, friendly, bartenders, knowledgeable without pretension. That's kind of the biggest thing for us. Because when you walk into the Whale, we want it to feel like a nice place to hang out. But we also want it to be, if you want to learn a ton about beer while you're there, that you have that option and we can talk through it. And if you already know what you want, we can get you a beer. If you walk in and have no idea about anything about beer, our job is not necessarily just to educate, but also to guide. So we want to engage in conversations to getting you your next favorite beer that you've ever had. And so we're located in Asheville, North Carolina. We have 3 locations up here, including our original location in West Asheville. We're also in Greenville, South Carolina, down by the baseball field on North Main Street. And we are in Charleston, South Carolina, as part of the Refinery Complex, which is a amphitheater, and that's on North Meeting Street.
Awesome. How about you, Chris?
So Joyful Noise is a new venture of mine and my wife's, and we are a listening bar. So first and foremost, most important thing is music. We have a incredible, really high-end vintage sound system, over 2,500 vinyl albums in our collection here. And we curate each night kind of to a different theme, whether that's a musical genre, or like tomorrow we're doing a sake pairing with our food, but also pairing music with it. So we're playing Japanese city pop. So we're able to kind of do unique things with music. Walk in. The goal here is it to feel unbelievably comfortable, like so comfortable that you can't get up, kind of thing. We want it to feel like your living room, hanging out, listening to music, having a bite to eat, having a beverage of your choice, which is very relevant for our discussion today. And so, yeah, hanging out, listening to music, good food, good beer, no TVs. It's just about listening and connecting with other people here.
Chris, elaborate a little bit on your history in hospitality in the North Carolina area, and then Ross, I'll come back over to you.
Yeah, so I originally was a pharmacist. I still am, and that's really driven a lot of my views on hemp derived products, but didn't really enjoy being a pharmacist. So my wife and other business partner started Hi-Wire Brewing in 2013, which is a craft brewery here in town. We are one of the larger craft breweries in the state. I don't really know the ranking anymore, but we'll put out well over 30,000 barrels of liquid this year. We sell in eight states, and we currently operate 9 locations. My responsibility at Hi-Wire was to build out those new locations and run our entire retail program. So that's my background. A lot of people, a lot of locations, a lot of different markets. So I'm very well versed in pretty much every major or secondary market within a 6-hour drive of Asheville. I can tell you where to go get a beer in any of those cities. And my passion has always been music, and it's really kind of turned on the last couple of years. So decided to take a step back from day to day at the brewery and follow my passion and open up a vinyl bar.
That's awesome. How about you, Ross?
So I moved to Asheville when I was 18 years old and worked everything from the local Ingles grocery store to cleaning hotel rooms to kind of cooking food, working in a restaurant downtown, really enjoying kind of, my youth when it was still kind of easy enough to make your way in Asheville, as it's gotten very expensive here. But I was very fortunate to land here. And then, working in the service industry at Mayfell's led me into Wicked Weed. So I started with Wicked Weed a few months after their inception. In 2012 is when they opened. and worked for them for a while, and doing things initially in the back of house, and then moving to front of house in their dedicated sour tasting room, the Funkatorium. I was one of the first employees there. And then, traveled the country actually with my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, when Wicked Weed first started packaging. And when Wicked Weed opened, there wasn't a ton of mixed fermentation in the marketplace, and especially not high volume mixed fermentation. A lot of it was import. And so I traveled the country establishing relationships with other breweries as I passed out Wicked Weed beer while I was kind of on a vision quest, if you will, for a few months. And ended up making a lot of industry connections. And when came back, and opened the Funkatorium and continued to, again, just, it was a very special place and time as Wicked Weed was doing that, really fostering a lot of these connections, which led me and my business partner, Justin, who also worked at the Funkatorium with me and for Wicked Weed, to separate and open our own place with the Whale. And so, my background's in hospitality has been everything from front of house, back of house to ownership. I don't anymore, but I did own a restaurant up in Virginia after the hurricane here. So I've kind of been well versed through everything through, bartender opening their own bar, to learning how the backside of all business management, then moving into kitchens, which is something the Whale does not do. Moving out of owning kitchens to being back to just the Whale. But the big thing in all of that is just the fostering of relationships and within the industry, and then within my own staff as well. I think those are the two things that really strike me as being the most paramount for what the Whale does and continues to do is industry relations. I've known for forever, and the one thing that we really did that was a bit taboo that I think got a lot of attention is not selling local beer. And that was something that really came out of knowing everyone that lives in Asheville, because Asheville is not a very big place, and thinking about how fun it would be to get a sales sheet from every one of your friends every morning, every Monday morning, and then have to explain to them why you're not buying their new IPA this week. But that really set us apart from everybody else here. So yeah, my background is really pretty well versified in all things kind of hospitality, as it's a hospitality town, and I'm still a hospitality worker.
I'm glad that we're having this episode with both you guys with the craft beer background, so we can all three speak about that, and kind of that's kind of the realm I was in as well. And what is interesting right now is when I communicate about, let's talk about the hemp beverage regulation, when I communicate in my newsletter to breweries, let's say, it's an interesting mix of some that are very much on board and have done the homework and realize how much of a benefit it can be for the greater industry as a whole, as well as revenue stream opportunities for them, and some that just straight up want it dead in the water and banned. What's some of, have you guys, what's kind of the down there? Is that kind of the same way, or is it kind of just maybe some isolated pockets of markets that may not understand the power of hemp beverages?
Austin, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yep. I think you'd be hard pressed to really, in Asheville especially, find much pushback against hemp beverages. Me as a decently heavy consumer, that sounds terrible, but I partake in THC beverages quite often. I have a preference for it. I've really been moving towards trying to be a little bit more health conscious, a little more athletic the past few years of my life. And so, the THC alternatives have really been beneficial in kind of allowing me to move that way in my life, which I'm really appreciative of. But now in Asheville, it's pretty hard pressed to go somewhere and they don't have an alternative beverage, THC beverage, at least CBD beverage, on the menu. It took a second. I think there was, even with my own staff, when I went to New Orleans and a few years ago and found Crescent 9 down there while I was just walking around Bourbon Street, and all the musicians were drinking these drinks. And so I asked the bartender what they were, and they told me, and that was kind of my first introduction to it. And so when I came back from that trip, I immediately got online and started ordering Delta Lights or Delta, that was the one that was doing like straight to consumer shipping. And because there's no real regulation on it, it's not an alcoholic beverage, it was kind of whatever. But I hesitate to say the first, but I don't know anyone else that was doing it when the whale first brought these in. And I had a lot of pushback from my employees because they were concerned about what that would look like, right? And I think like through just application and then seeing that there was a demand for the product, and also that the consumer of the products, it wasn't some sort of reefer madness kind of experiment here. It's the same as it ever was, and it's just an alternative beverage. Really put a lot of calmed a lot of nerves, on my staff side, and everyone felt very comfortable. And I think that's kind of the broader picture for everybody across, probably the country, is that without experience or exposure, maybe there's some hesitancy, just based on the fact that people don't have a relationship with cannabis or understand it or have been force-fed this idea that cannabis is something that, is taboo or, dangerous, for lack of better words, which, I think anyone that has done their research or has, an open mind really realizes that it's not. It's a much more mild approach than even alcohol, And so, from my vantage here, and Fro's got a lot of, experience in bigger markets. My experience is more in Greenville, Charleston, and Asheville as being the primary markets in Roanoke, Virginia as well. But the hesitancy on it that existed, maybe especially as it was emerging, seems to really be pretty mute at this point. I think that the idea of having, and like where a lot of this comes from, is just having a product that is somewhat intoxicating, that's unregulated. And what happens is, you've got Kratom and things like this that are like in a gas station, but that's a real niche market for a consumer that's seeking out this. Now you're seeing the THC move more into a mainstream market, and that's when the government's gonna say, hey, where's our cut, right? Like, how do we make money, and how do we regulate this? And so I think that that's where the pushback really lives in this moment in time against alternative beverages, is from a not understanding, or on the government side, how do we make this work for us? Or is it easier to just say no?
Be surprised, and I know that clearly these people exist. You've talked to them, but it's no secret that the craft beer world is kind of going through a rethinking, is the way I'll talk it, the last couple of years. Ross mentioned people wanting to be healthier. Alcohol isn't the healthiest thing in the world. People have dependency issues with it, a lot of calories, and it makes sense why. But at the same time, people want to continue to socialize, let loose, have a good time, relax. So it to me, as a business owner, I think it's important to offer what people want. People are wanting these beverages. People aren't wanting to go out and drink 10 beers in a night anymore. And so beverage manufacturers, I think, are in the perfect position to ride this wave. We have the equipment to do it. Hi-Wire, for example, we just put in a flash pasteurizer, which is something that we never, ever thought we would do. We were, there was a point where it was like, oh, that's cheating, blah, 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 blah. But it's an expensive, specialized piece of equipment. And we're doing it, we're doing it right. And because of that, we've actually brought on a ton of contract clients for both beer and for hemp derived cannabis beverages. So from a business standpoint, I think you're nuts to not try to dabble in that. And even if you're not manufacturing these products, offering them in your tap room, I think is important. When we first started Hi-Wire, and I'm sure most breweries were like this. It was beer only. We didn't even have a Coca-Cola for sale. It was just beer. And as people's tastes and habits change over time, which they're going to continually do, most brewery tap rooms, where legally allowed, now offer wine, now offer spirits, non-alcoholic beverages, kombucha, all of these things to make a better customer experience. And so again, I think it's a no-brainer to offer these products. Kind of that something for everyone approach. And one more thing, specifically talking to the Asheville market specifically, Asheville's been through an interesting time the last 5-6 years. Obviously, we all went through COVID. Asheville's never really recovered since COVID. And to make it even worse, we got hit by a hurricane in 2024 that just wrecked the town. I've heard tourism numbers are down anywhere, and Ross, correct me if you've heard a different number, but 40%. 40%. And so we need to be able to offer things that people want. It's more important than ever to have a very diverse, quality forward menu for us to offer, because we need people to come back, support our community.
Yeah. What do you think? Has it changed anything as far as expanded your guests inside of your establishments as far as having those products in there, or is it the same types of customers that are in there, or did it widen the net a little bit for you guys?
I think it's widening the net. Definitely, craft beer's changed so much since Hi-Wire started and since the Whale started. But we used to just get kind of those beer nerds or guys who are really excited about beer. Now we get everybody now. I mean, it's more of a gathering spot in our tap rooms than a brewery per se. And some people just don't want to get drunk, or sometimes people need a break from alcohol. That's very healthy. That's normal. But they still want to hang out. They still want to be part of the crew. They still want to socialize. And to be able to have a predictable outcome with these products, I think it's very valuable for people.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think that people don't walk in with beer or weed or whatever tattooed on their head, so it's hard to differentiate what it is, right? Like to say, is it a different consumer? It's just a consumer who's choosing to buy a product, so it's hard to differentiate. Has the inclusion of hemp derived cannabis beverage on our menu help bring more people in? That's hard to say. Are they moving? Are we selling them? Absolutely. Are people only drinking that and abstaining from alcohol? No. Are some people coming in and having 2 beers and then having a cannabis beverage at the end as the wind down? Yeah, totally. Are people coming in and just drinking cannabis drinks? Of course. Are people coming in and just not drinking THC drinks? Of course. It's still a gauntlet. I think one thing that Fro hit for sure is Asheville is a really interesting place. Always has been, right? It's because we sit on top of a giant crystal vortex or something, but it's been going through stuff, right? And that's in a lot of ways. And how do we encourage tourism? I hope he's still there. How do we encourage tourism? How do we get people back? And while I don't know the answer, I would be doing it, right? I know the things that we can do. We've moved to being very event focused, creating reasons for people to come in other than just to have the daily pint or 3. And that's helped. But I think as a whole, Asheville's really poised to be a place, especially in this movement of, are we regulating? What are we going to do for the state? Are we going to move forward with legalization? But we've got a really unique opportunity, just depending on how this goes, for an attraction of tourism. Beer tourism is something that Fro and I definitely moved through. Him opening the brewery in 2013, really the kind of heyday of craft beer in Asheville, 2014, 2015, really started gearing up, becoming a destination. I opened in 2017, so we were a little bit later on it, but I was at the Funkatorium really through the height of it, where, we had lines out the door of people showing up to purchase
said collaboration with Jester King or, whatever. Like there's a huge interest in it. Well, a lot of that beer consumerism interest, because beer became very popular culture for a moment. It was the thing to do. So chasing beers was the thing to do to a big network that didn't exist previous to this beer boom. And what happened was you have a huge expansion, and now we're seeing a course correction, a market correction to some sort of baseline, because interest in the public view has really shifted a little bit. We're not seeing these lines out the door anymore. But beer is cyclical, and it always has been cyclical, and it always will be cyclical, where interests, they move throughout time depending on what it is. Cannabis is not cyclical. Cannabis has always been expanding. We went from a place of fear mongering and no acceptance of cannabis to counterculture, taboo, but acceptance, to now really being mainstream acceptance. I mean, with what, 38 states legal or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but there's a real acceptance for it. And I think that there's this narrative of still unacceptance. And I don't think that that's very valid in the general population. I think that that exists in a place of regulation and government, and then government telling you that there's still people that are very nervous about this, and your neighbor's scared that you might grow a plant in your backyard, and it's just not real. And I think Asheville, like Fro saying, like we've been beaten down here, man. I mean, there's no other way of putting it other than it's been a struggle. I know without ever asking Fro, hey, has it been easy? That the answer is no, because it hasn't been easy for any of us. But Asheville as a destination and as a place that's really needing support now from tourism more than ever. We need you to come here. It's beautiful. It's great. The vibes are good. The place is good. The hurricanes suck, but it happened and we're moving forward, like we need people to come back bad. But this idea of hemp derived beverages and hemp, and the talk about legalization in the state and regulation and all of that, it should be a reason that people are also coming to Asheville, right? Beer was really that big reason for the last decade, and I think that's great. And we all have been a part of that as far as manufacturers, retailers, whatever our position is to try to push that. But as we're seeing that interest shift, change, move, here's another one that really we could get as a town. We could really gather a lot of interest in bringing people here for an escape, because that's what Asheville's always been. That's why we're all still here. We're just escaping. We're trying our best to live somewhat retired while working way too hard. And that's the joy that I think Asheville brings. And that's why I think it's so important to have this conversation right now. Is it's taking away, it could potentially take away an element that's really a big connective tissue for our area. I mean, it is.
It's one of those things that it's already on the shelf, and it's a confusing piece. So talk a little bit about, and I don't need like exact numbers, but could you guesstimate like what sort of, is it a decent percentage of certain sales in that category, or like would it be a big dent into your business? Obviously it would draw down the less people, and then bottom dollar, is there effect? You guys have any ranges or ideas there?
I think it'd be foolish to say no. I think it'd be foolish to say no. Sorry, Fred, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Joyful Noise, we've only been open about a month and a half, but we sell a good amount of THC beverages. Kind of makes sense. You're listening to music. Music and cannabis have always gone together, and so I do think it would hurt. I do think less people would go out because that's not an option. They're going to do it anyways. So they're probably going to stay home. So I think, to me, the most important part about these beverages are just the social aspect of it. I think most people are stuck with their head in their phone these days. And it's also, the economy sucks. Nobody has any money. And so getting out and socializing and being with friends and other human beings, I think is more important than ever. And I think this is just one small piece in fostering that type of environment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the Whale, we're not a brewery, but we do offer a communal gathering space
for as most inclusive as we can possibly be for all people. And like Fro was saying, like, okay, you remove this from the equation. Well, you're only removing the ability for people to get out of their home and converse. And I think in an age of post-COVID where, we all had to really figure out what our relationship with the world is, what our relationship around others is, our comfort level. And it really threw a lot of people for a spin, for sure. I mean, there's no way of putting it. And now we're having a place where, hey, we're having these gathering spaces. It's not just about alcohol. Forever it was, but now it's not about alcohol. It's about gathering. It's about communicating. It's about putting the phone down. And I think that these hemp products exist in a place where now you can enjoy that without being at home, because cannabis exists in a way that you can't roll up to the bar with a joint and sit down at the bar and get into a conversation with the bartender. But with hemp derived THC beverages, it gives you the ability to leave the house, to imbibe in something that you're comfortable with, and then to have those communications with the connections with the bartender, people around you, be in a gathering space, get out of your hole. And I honestly think that's probably the most important part about this. I think there's two. I think the communal aspect in a post-COVID world is something that we really need to be leaning into, and especially in a post-Helene world for us up in Asheville. When the rain starts howling, I guarantee every single person that lives here. We had it happen a few weeks ago, and it rained for 2 days straight. And like, I woke up in the middle of the night and was like, "Whoa, is this PTSD?" Like, I didn't know I had that. Like, it's still. And so it's very important to establish connection, and that's what this does. And again, it would be a shame for that to disappear based on the powers that be not understanding what the joy that it brings, right? Like the community that it brings, like the human interaction. I think the human interaction, the communalness is a huge part. I think also, I'm in South Carolina, and now South Carolina is moving some legislation where, they're trying to figure it out, like what's the cap and how do we distribute these things? And they're talking about putting all this in liquor stores. And what we're providing, what Fro's providing, what I'm providing is a space that we sell alcohol, but it's not demanded by alcohol. There's people in recovery. There's people in, all different aspects and walks of life that don't want to go into a liquor store, and so what you're actually doing is you're encouraging people to find alternate means so that they don't have to go into places that are uncomfortable. What we're trying to create is spaces that are comfortable, that are communal, that offer things for everybody, no matter what your preference is. I just think it's a real bummer and a real shame that, because of not understanding and really not being able to profit or tax or regulate, that they're willing to just scrap everyone's ability to be happy over it. I think it's just a terrible thing.
Yeah. So I mentioned before, before I got into the hospitality and beer business, I was a pharmacist. I'm still a licensed pharmacist. My wife's also a pharmacist who co-owns these businesses with me. One thing that I think is missed a lot in these conversations are the fact that these are lab tested products, where the dosage you're going to get. Would you ever take a blood pressure medication without knowing the dose, just willy-nilly? Oh yeah, this is going to be good for me. I'm sure a lot of us have stories of that one time, man, I ate that brownie and I was out for 24 hours. Like, that's not fun. It's also dangerous. There's a reason why our society regulates these chemicals and these compounds that we put into our body, whether it's a blood pressure medication or a psychiatric medication or a cancer medication. It doesn't matter. We regulate these things, and we make sure that the right dose is getting to the right person. I view these drinks that way. The same thing. It's you know what you're getting into now, as opposed to the days of, hey man, this dude made these brownies and they're really strong. Fun, but that's not appropriate for everybody, especially as it's going more mainstream. So I think just from a public health standpoint and a safety standpoint, having these beverages that the dose going into it, what you're getting yourself into, I think is safer. Because let's be honest, people are gonna use cannabis. I mean, people have used cannabis for thousands of years. It's not going away. So from a harm reduction standpoint, having these predictable doses, I think is actually safer. My 2 cents.
I think that's amazing. I think, and I enjoy that perspective, especially as a pharmacist. Like, for me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right now, where there's accountability for the manufacturers that comes direct from the consumers. If the consumer is getting delivered a product that's marked at some 10 milligram THC, hemp derived THC, and they drink it and it's actually 100 milligrams, do you think you'll ever buy that product again? No. You know what I mean? And so there's an accountability and a trust that's created between the manufacturer and a relationship and the consumer, and that drives. Now we're at a point right now where it seems the government is not okay with that being the norm. Well, okay, that's fine, but what happens from there? Well, regulation. And I don't think that there's anyone that's opposed. Maybe we're not 100% in thinking that is the right thing, but where we are in this moment, it is the only way physically, or that we're going to move forward, right, is with a regulation. To remove this, I think, is actually more harmful than to regulate, because if you just eliminate this accessibility from the market, then you'll have things unregulated. And we're doing these in a commercial setting, right? This isn't at your buddy's house. We're doing this in a commercial setting where we're responsible for what is consumed on property. Regulation just makes so much sense. And, I'm sure there's going to be cap conversations. I'm more for, hey, yourself, right? And play that game, but that's not, the government's not going to go from that. So, if we're looking at, per serving 10 milligram cap, right? Like, I don't think there's anyone that's going to be opposed to it. If they say 5 milligram cap, well, we'd like to see 10, but 5 is better than 0, right? Like it gives the ability for the government, for us as retailers, for us as manufacturers, to make sure that the product's delivered in the way that it's supposed to, that the product reacts in the way that it's supposed to, and that the government's not worried about the liability of the product falling into a gray area. So I don't really see how there is any pushback towards regulation. I just think that it's going to be, it needs to be, we need to be proactive. We need to get signatures on this. We need to push the government in a way of knowing, the government's for the people, by the people. If this is something that the people want and the people dictate, then we need to be loud. We need to let people know, like, this is what we want, not out of fear mongering, not out of, I don't use it, so I don't care. We should all care, just in the same way that, with alcohol, there's a responsibility of me as a bartender, me as a bar owner, Fro as a manufacturer, that we're delivering a product that is what it says it is, and that it's served in a responsible way. There's no difference here. There's no difference. And if you got to cap it, you got to cap it.
It's one of the things too. I think it's undersaid a lot is those that are their farm bill compliant products. With that QR code and that batching and that testing, it is, and this is all I'm going to speak as our lens from being in the alcohol industry. the hemp beverages are the most transparent adult beverage on the shelf. And the irony to like flip it and villainize it is the wilder part. I mean, we all grew up in the craft beer industry. I didn't know I was chugging, 8 to 10 400-calorie beers half the time. You know what I mean? I put on the weight and I lost it after I quit drinking, but it was one of those things where we didn't realize it because it wasn't there. And now these hemp beverages are transparent and they are very in your face as far as here's everything that's inside, every single piece of everything that's going through these batches. So thank you guys both for your perspective. And
I want to ask you a question, Nate, if I could.
Yeah.
With your not consuming alcohol anymore, do you use THC drinks as a communal or like if you go out to the bar, is that a go-to for you?
Yeah, it is, but it's also one of those things. So I also still work in the alcohol industry, have the products in my, so I'm not like outside and closed of it, but I do like it as a bridge in those scenarios. The problem is I'm in Pennsylvania where we don't even have it on the shelves unless it's in a vape shop or a coffee shop. We can't, the only law that exists is that it cannot be distributed, manufactured, or stored and sold in a place that also has alcohol. So they did a reversal there where they separated the two from each premise. And that's my goal in our bill that we have going up there so that we can merge them all together and really bring that opportunity that you're talking about. But for me, it was also one of those things where it wasn't a ritualistic thing. So I commend on this show many times that, with athletic brewing and different things like that coming out with non-alcoholic beers, I tried to quit multiple times up until 3.5 years ago while working in the industry. And I couldn't really get it going until the product started tasting good. So that's when really hemp beverages started tasting well and things like that. But I'm very cautious for my personal journey. I don't do anything ritualistically. So it never became hemp beverages at 5 p.m. every day or happy hour or anything like that. It's only for those crutch moments when I'm out in a bar or out somewhere at a party or a barbecue. I love them to be able to help me socialize and do everything, Ross, that you talked about, which is that human connection. Because the first year of sobriety, I holed up in the house and I isolated myself. So now I'm in the back end of that socialization, and everything you said meant a lot to me because that's the truth of why I do these episodes, and it's why I got into this industry in hemp beverages while also being in the alcohol industry. Because for me personally, I say it publicly here a lot, it saved my life, and I want those products on the shelf, and I want those products to be out there for those people to be able to access them. And whether it's recreationally, medicinally, or just for mental health reasons, everybody should have a choice as to what they want to put into their bodies.
Yeah, I just want to hop on and say it saved my life too, brother. Saved my life too. I mean, it really, it has changed me in a lot of ways to have the accessibility of the social aspect and to have something that also, with 2 young kids, wife, 5 bars, a daytime gig. We're all very busy folks, and to be able to find something to unwind with. And I'm definitely not anti-alcohol. It's what I do for a business, right? But something that works better for me personally. It's changed the ability. I've lost over 100 pounds.
Same here.
Staying motivated, moving, and I appreciate that non-ritualistic aspect of it too. It works in a different way. It works in a very different receptor, and it's a very mild thing. It's a very mild thing, and I think the mildness of hemp-derived cannabis in general, is something that it's very important in this day and age to express. Is like anything, too much, too fast. Not good, but it's a mild thing, and it should be approached with that understanding. So I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, appreciate your time, guys. It's something where, being able to condense this into a very tight amount of time and be able to cover the topics necessary while also being without a script, and just to remind the audience, as well as you guys are watching and listening, those of us have never met, except for Chris and I met about maybe 10 years ago or so, more in the beer world up in Philadelphia when I was recruiting Hi-Wire to kind of come in my portfolio. It didn't work out, but here we are now years later, organically talking again. So, hey, but I want to thank you guys for coming on also with that no script part, because you had no idea what was coming on. You had no idea what questions I was going to ask, but you had the cojones to come on, and that courage is something I want to publicly commend every guest, because that's the true format of our show. And it also, I want everybody to see that that's also the fact of connecting with strangers. And what you just saw here was not only the fact that we care about hemp beverages and we care about what goes into people's bodies, but we also care about the mental health and community aspect that's involved with social connection, because at the end of the day, the three of us, that's the business we're in. We do sell products that do, bring in social interactions, but at the end of the day, if the world's not social, none of the three of us are in business either. So this is something that a lot of people don't think about when we work in hospitality. Is it's really not about the products and the food and the beverage. It's about the socialization and the human connection. Again, I wanted to thank you guys for having the Jones to come on. Everybody, I want to remind you, the challenge is 5 minutes a week to kindness to a stranger. When you're walking down the street, put your phone in your pocket, look people in the eye, say hello. When you're at the gas station, filling up your cup of coffee, look to the person to your left, ask them how they're doing, shut your mouth and listen to their story. 5 minutes a week, 20 minutes a month. We talk about ROI on this show all the time. That is the best ROI you can get. There are people in this world, while your life might be full, might be healthy, might be happy, there are a lot of people out here that are not doing that well, and a lot of people that feel alone. You could help somebody save their life, their day, their year. And literally, I mean that when you say your life, there's little human connection moments. 5 minutes a week, everybody. Thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate you guys taking the time today.
We're at a really interesting point here, and regulation, especially when it comes to hemp derived THC products in the market, in the beverage market. And it's the most important time to show up. The website is don't ruin, regulate, NC.
No. Regulate, don't ruin, NC.com. You're good. I know I put it in your head in the beginning and we got to wipe it away. That's 100%
Regulate,
my fault.
don't ruin, NC.com. Anyways, go to the website, check it out. There's a ton of educational stuff on there. It's a really important time for us as people to educate ourselves on what's going on around us, from big issues to issues that don't necessarily affect you or land in your backyard, but they do affect a lot of people, especially in this hemp-derived market here with the Farm Bill. And it's really brought a lot of happiness and a lot of progression to a lot of people when it comes to communal socialization, the ability to just move better in the world and bring happiness. And I think that even if that's not you, it's great to educate yourself on that, because it is your neighbors. And at this point in time, you could really be, by not showing up, by not educating yourself, actually harming the ability for your neighbor to be happy. And that is it's not the vibe. So the vibe is to hop on to regulate, don't ruin, NC.com, read up, check up, see what's going on, see what's going down. We're at a crazy point where this could all really go away, and that would not be good for anyone. So even if it doesn't directly affect you, learn and make sure that you're showing up, not just for yourself, not just for your family, not just for your immediate circle, but for the people around you. Because at this time, in a post-COVID world and everything going on, the best thing you can have is empathy and understanding of your neighbors. So check it out, read up, get educated, and sign the petition. Help us out.